Hi, friends. This will be a brief summary introduction to the astrological energies and shifts of 2026. As the year progresses, I will record and share with you more detailed videos that really address the specific transit energy that's happening at that moment. But I just wanted to give you an overview and some dates and just some things as you're planning your goals, your intentions, your practices for 2026. Maybe some of what I have to say will help to inform some of the things that you're paying attention to. And of course, I'm going to share generally in the global, like what's happening in the cosmos, where planets are shifting into. But the very best way for you to make sense of this and work with this is to pull out your chart, um, and really look at where these things are taking place in your chart by house, by planetary, aspect, if there are some really major shifts happening in the world, but they may or may not have a massive impact on you depending on what you have in those signs, in those degrees, by square, by opposition, by trine. So some of these energies are going to really impact everything in the world and maybe not have as big a personal impact. And some of them may have a very big personal impact because of where it sits in your chart. Of course, I'm here to help you do that work, to really look at your chart for the year, your upcoming transits, and how these energies are affecting you in particular. So, the first thing that I want to tell you is that Neptune is a very slow moving outer transpersonal planet. It has a cycle, an orbit cycle of about 165 years. Neptune is switching signs into Aries this year. It's ingressing, moving into the 0 degrees of Aries point on January 27th of 2026. The last time Neptune was in Aries was during the Civil War from 1861 to 1875, Civil War and Reconstruction. Neptune has a lot to do with our ideals and our higher perspective, belief systems, our sense of faith, spirituality. Aries is a sign often associated with war, and getting what I want and willing to fight and die for what I want. And so Neptune in Aries is a little bit of that idealizing war as an answer to, moving forward, and maybe a little bit of an impulsivity. Aries, impulsive, jumping into action with a very fiery spirit. Let's go, all guns blazing around Neptunian ideals, like what we imagine to be possible, what we imagine to be true, our sense of faith. So that's one thing happening in the world. The other thing is Saturn is moving into Aries as well this year. Saturn has a 30-year, 28 and a half to 30-year cycle. So you can, if you're at least 28, 30 years old, you can go back and do the math and see what was happening the last time Saturn was in Aries in my chart. Saturn's moving into Aries on February 14th, Valentine's Day. And Saturn is about bringing a very intentional, slow, patient work focus to anything you have long-term goals around. So Saturn is not about quick fixes or rash, impulsive energy. It's not so happy in Aries because Aries is fast, fast, fast. And Saturn is like, no, no, no. We need a strategic plan and we need to figure out, how we're going to move forward slowly so that we succeed and don't fail around our goals. So Saturn in Aries is asking us to have a plan and a structure. If there is a desire you have and something you know that you want to bring about in your life, you're fired up about it, you're excited about it, Saturn is asking you to slow down a little bit and be very intentional about how you are going to succeed around those goals. Okay, Saturn and Neptune together will be meeting in an exact conjunction at 0 degrees of Aries. This hasn't happened in like thousands of years. Saturn and Neptune have met up, every 30 years. Saturn's going to meet Neptune somewhere, but Saturn hasn't met Neptune in Aries in the 0 degree point of Aries, which is all about, by the way, 0 degrees is always an initiating, beginning, very, very new energy. Actually, I want to show you something. This card, which is the Ace of Wands, is really about that 0 degree energy point, that seed point of fire, right? It's like, I have some something is lighting up, awakening, coming into some new, there's a spark. There's a spark that if I stoke that fire, it can really build into something constructive, right? It could also build into wildfire. We have to be careful. With Saturn, it's more about putting the rocks in the fireplace and creating a grate and containing slow, steady. How do we stoke the fire and the embers so that it's going to manifest something, that is really long lasting? And we don't burn ourselves out. So, but this is very much that energy of the 0 degrees Aries. So, with Neptune and Saturn together, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the world. But you want to look again in your life, in your chart. What are your goals? What are your desires? What is the plan, the actionable, manifested day to day work you're doing to bring that about? But it's very much linked to Neptune, which is something on a soul level, something you can vision, something you really can imagine, like, oh, wow, this would really be something if I could bring it about. So Saturn Neptune could give you the real concrete tools and action plan to bring that about, which I really like for all of us. Um, where would this be affecting you in your chart? Take a look and see where you have Aries in your chart. What house does Aries rule? Where is the 0 degrees Aries point? What house is that happening in? That might be where you have a lot of work to do and that it feels really important. Saturn takes things seriously. It's important. Again, Neptune, I have a vision around this and I want to succeed at it. So you're going to look there. You're also going to look at any of the fire signs, the other fire sign. Let me think. Hold on. Hold on. Okay. Any other fire signs, Leo and Sagittarius, if you have 0 degrees there, it's going to be trining, which is a really harmonious, happy, friendly flow of that spark, that energy, that willpower, that determination, that vision is going to be supporting that. So if you have, for instance, your sun at 0 degrees of Leo, and when I say zero, really we're looking like 0 to 3 degrees. And as the year goes on, Saturn will be moving through like those first 5, 6 degrees. So you want to look in those early degrees and say, wow, is this helping me in a really supportive, happy, great way? Where you have to be a little bit more cautious is if it's opposing Libra, right? So Aries opposes Libra. If you have early things in Libra, it's going to be creating a little bit of an opposition, push, pull, tug of war with whatever you have going on in Libra. And then the squares. So if you have something in Capricorn and in Cancer, again, in those early 0 to 5 degrees, it's going to be squaring. This energy is squaring that. So a square is the most challenging aspect. It's like we're not seeing eye to eye. We're not getting along. We're at odds, at cross paths with each other. So it requires a lot of extra intention and work to figure out how to move forward and integrate around that so you're not constantly battling with yourself. So again, looking at your chart for that. All right, other big news this year. Um, Uranus is moving into Gemini, 0 degrees. Again, 0 degrees, initiating some brand new energy. Gemini is all about information, knowledge, data, facts, and how we learn it, how we store it, how we use that information, how we communicate it back out. It's language, it's the movement of knowledge and information. Uranus is a planet that is a catalyst for change. It is sudden and often disruptive, unstable energy of like, it was going along a certain path for a while, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, flash of lightning is the metaphor for a Uranus event. Like it suddenly hits us and everything changes. It's off the rails. The ultimate intention of Uranian change is to be a catalyst to move us forward. So the question with Uranus in Gemini is going to be, how are we moving forward with new technologies, with new insight around information, around how we communicate, around how we listen, how we receive and gather our news, our information. Obviously, AI, birth of all of that is in the consciousness now as a new technology. Pluto, by the way, is in Aquarius, which Uranus rules Aquarius, and Pluto's been in Aquarius for a couple of years now, really involving certain kind of fears we have, but also how we're either have power over or others have power over us around the distribution of technology and what technology has on the horizon. So, a lot of people with the Uranus and Pluto trining each other in those air signs, we can expect to see some really unexpected, surprising, very fast-moving shifts around technology and information. Let's hope that we have the wisdom to really discern between fake, false lies and truth, right? That's a deeper, more conscious path that we're all going to have to be very intentional around this year. I do want to show you this card, which is the Ace of Swords. Swords is the suit of air, of the mind, of information. So the Ace of Swords is also a seed point of we're stretching ourselves and we're elevating and coming into some new spark, new awareness, new um, consciousness on an intellectual level, right? New ability to reason or piece through information, maybe new ways of like accessing the deeper, deeper inner and outer wisdom that we hold as a potential as humans. So that could be part of this Uranian energy. Now, I do also want to say that the last several times, Uranus has an 84-year life cycle. The last several times Uranus has been in Gemini, the United States specifically has had a war every single time. So the last Uranus in Gemini was during World War II and right after 1941 to 1949. The time before that was 1859 to 1866, the US Civil War. The time before that was 1774 to 1782, which was the American Revolutionary War and the Constitution and all of that. So I think that the US specifically at its Uranus return, again, is going to have some interesting things show up. So we'll wait and see how that plays out. Okay, Jupiter has been in Cancer since last year. Cancer is about home and family. It's very much about nurturing and the ones we love, caretaking, protecting. It's very intuitive. It's a much more feminine energy. That's going to be there until June 30th. On June 30th, Jupiter is also moving into a fire sign into 0 degrees of Leo. So it will be sitting in a trine with Saturn and Neptune at that time. Leo's a different energy. Leo at its very best is about bravery, courage, nobility, generosity, really taking on leadership to create and to be generous with what we know we're capable of putting out in the world. So, Jupiter in Leo for everyone, Jupiter is expansive. It's about growth, it's about possibility, and a certain kind of optimism. Maybe we have optimism in our own ability to lead, to create, to self-express from a place of generosity, from a place of not scarcity, but abundance. Um, we're going to have a Venus retrograde this year from October 3rd through November 13th. We're going to have three Mercury retrogrades this year, which, be cautious around speech, travel, all that kind of things. February 26th to March 19th. The second one will be June 29th to July 22nd, and the third will be October 24th to November 12th. We're also having Chiron, which is called the Wounded Healer. Chiron's been in Aries the last several years. Aries collectively, is about our anger, our violence, our aggression, but also our ability to know our own desires, our own will, and to assert that and to really put ourselves in the center of our lives in an authoritative way and have autonomy. So it's very much about individualism and what do I want and what action am I taking to get that. Chiron has been encouraging us to try to heal around our own individual goals and sense of self. There's a big shift when Chiron moves into Taurus, more so even because all of the other planets are really going to be in very masculine fire and air signs. And this is going to be a nice little counterbalance that we have this healing energy moving into an earth sign. And Taurus is very much about understanding security, stability, groundedness. What do we need on a survival basis? It's about our connection to the earth, to resources, food, and shelter. It's our connection to our own body and physical well-being. It's a connection to our money and our, like, what do we have? Chiron in Taurus will be an interesting time for us to really look at what do we need to heal in our relationships to our body, to the earth, to money, to food. investments, our budgeting, our consumerism. Like, how much do we really need? And what would it look like to need less and maybe move into simplicity and to create more sense of security? Um, Let me see what else. The North Nodes, the eclipses, are going to be, you know what? I'll just put the eclipse notes in the dates in the notes so that you will see when the eclipse dates are. And you can again look in your chart and say, do I have anything in those exact degrees, either in the sign opposite, squaring, and what might that be calling me to change? Because, an eclipse is usually a time of just revelation, of seeing something that you hadn't seen before, of rebooting and creating new change around that energy and that place in your life. So you can look at that. I think that's what I'm going to offer you for now. Again, that's just a synopsis of what's to come, and you're going to look at your own chart. You're going to reach out if you need and want to, really get a more specific, detailed, like your year ahead. And as we go through the year, I will offer more wisdom around these archetypes and energies. Wishing everybody a wonderful, happy, healthy 2026, and I will see you again soon.